Hi, I'm Marty Saddam. This 15-minute presentation has the objectives of letting you know this book exists and why and how it was written. I graduated from Norwich in 1965. Last year, in 2019, Tim Donovan, a friend from our days at Norwich, and in subsequent years either because of Norwich or our association with the Abrams Tank Program or due to the fact our sons were high school classmates, asked me if I would be willing to make this presentation to friends of the Kreitzberg Library. How could I say other than yes? So, here we are. I wrote this book off and on over a period of about 4 years, aiming at hoped-for publication in 2019, 200th anniversary of Norwich founding. The book is more than a personal memoir. It is a collaborative memoir, my invented genre, comprising a collection of stories written with the help from a group of friends more than 50 years after the events happened, and is a historical record not found in other histories of Norwich. While it is a memoir, the book also catalogs relevant history associated with a particular subject. The original focus was to relate stories to the buildings on campus in the 1960s, thus the play on words title, Building Memories. But there are stories that go beyond the buildings and are grouped under a category of memory bricks. While mostly written during the 200th anniversary year of Norwich, this book is not a history of Norwich, but a snapshot of a few years during the 1960s. It is a series of stories of campus life and cadets. The book started as individual stories intended for submission and publication as part of a running internet publication by Norwich University as part of the 200-year celebration of its founding, called 200 Things. Some pieces submitted were suggested by university staff, others by me or fellow classmates. Many pieces were published, but with considerable editing, since they were to be limited in length. In this book they appear as they were initially submitted. Stories are generally focused on the 4-year period 1961 to 1965. But some stories are memoir history and reference events and people in history back into the 1800s. The book owes much to the excellent job that was done by the Kreitzberg Library staff in creating a digital archive. All sources identified in the endnotes. As the library evolved its design of the archive, I had to keep up with ensuring references and links were the latest. The library encouraged alumni to explore archives, particularly the new evolving digital archives. I did, and I believed I must have looked at each artifact. But it keeps growing, which is a good thing. But my included resources are as of late 2019. The Oral Histories Archive was also a great resource. Also, I used innovative internet resources such as newspapers.com. I used excerpts from newspapers and Norwich publications, the Guide on, yearbooks, cadet handbooks, special orders, Norwich 200 Things. And then a lot of personal resources, input in terms of narrative from old friends and their files. Over the time of writing, I would share a story draft with old friends who often either called or emailed me their recollections, stimulated by the draft. I incorporated many of those inputs, verbatim, and, I believe, make the stories more interesting reading. Many inputs included things I was completely unaware of or had been kept secret until now. As mentioned earlier, the book is a collection of stories, but it is also a collection of artifacts. There are nearly 100 figures that are included in the book. Many are from personal files, and most are from the library archives. I dedicated the book to Colonel Rogers Gregory. If someone asked me to name important people in my life, I would have to say Colonel Gregory was at the top of the list. He was the Norwich Deputy Commandant during the mid-1960s and later became Commandant. As Regimental Commander during my senior year, I spent at least an hour with him every morning reviewing issues and plans that were going on with the Corps and receiving advice and coaching. He was a man with gravitas and a wry smile. He never told you what to do. He had you figure it out. A wonderful man, soldier, and mentor, and the embodiment of leadership. Just being around him was reassuring. When you are 21, you can make many mistakes. I certainly did, but I was not afraid to try, and he was always positive in helping me make things right. This sample of figures is from a yearbook, and my own files included a picture of Colonel Gregory advising me on some matter. I had no idea the picture existed before finding it in the 1964 war whoop. The second picture was taken by a classmate's dad during our first rook formation, with the prescribed from-home uniform. The third picture is me, my mugshot just after receiving my buzz haircut and wearing the first of our many issued uniforms. Pictures often tell a story that words can't. The first picture on this slide is from the story Vermont Winter, Lonesome Whistles and Crunching Snow. The lonesome whistles refers to the sound a late-night train passing to the west of campus makes, and the crunching snow refers to the unforgettable and very cold sound snow makes when walking with jump boots. 1,200 cadets marching in formation to breakfast is eerie and is seared in memory. The Rook door placard and Rook tag issue pictures come from two stories, one entitled Rook and the other Name Tags. They provide an overview of the Rook experience as well as documenting how the name Rook got started. For nearly 55 years, I didn't know. These figures are from the stories Shoulder Patches and Flagpole and Cannon. At the request of classmates, since I had a personal involvement, I wrote the story about how some of the Norwich patches, still worn by cadets today, were created. The Flagpole and Cannon story contains anecdotes about memories associated with that particular campus location still vivid in memory that was the focus of formations, flag raising, and lowering and ceremonies. However, the stories related here are more about things not seen or ever heard. The daily flag raising and lowering with cannon firing and bugle calls played over a speaker system on Dewey Hall was part of our daily Cadet Corps ritual. The cannon was pointed toward the south end of the parade ground. The shotgun shell was the cannon charge. The evening gun was fired at the time of retreat, and the flag was lowered, and the daily ceremony signified the end of the normal military day. Legend has it that the evening gun was originally intended to drive away evil spirits. Bugle calls included reveille, retreat, and taps. Some stories relate to things that have dramatically changed for the Cadet Corps from earlier years, such as uniforms and how we communicated. One of the things that was unique to life in a military college is the requirement to wear uniform or uniforms every day. When I arrived at Norwich, we were all to wear our arrival uniform of khaki trousers, white shirt, and black tie, black socks, and black shoes. Within 24 hours, we had our heads shaved and were transformed with issued uniforms. We all looked the same. This was the start to wearing a uniform for the next 4 years, and many years thereafter. We were told what to wear every hour of every day. We had several uniforms that we were required to hang in a specific order in our room, wardrobes. The uniform of the day was transmitted via the uniform code mast with colored flags and streamers hoisted to the yardarm by the regimental officer of the day. The mast was located to the left of the south entrance of Dewey Hall. The first image is extracted from the 1965 Cadet Handbook and was part of the lead into the story Uniform of the Day. And it has anecdotes about often looking at the yardarm for confirmation you are in the correct uniform. The same story also documented the many and varied uniform combinations we wore, such as the dress blues with white duck trousers, none of which the modern Corps of Cadets know about. There are artifacts that would likely not be candidates for publication in any official history of Norwich, but they represent documents that are burned into old cadet memories. These images are part of the story, Demerits, Tours, and CMC. The first is from the leather-bound Bible, Norwich University Rules and Regulations, with an extract of the section on demerits and punishment. Also shown are parts of the special orders that announce punishment by name of offenders. This special order, with offenders' names blurred, announced punishments associated with 1963 panty raid adventure captured in the story on Wilson Hall. When I started writing building memories, the original focus was on buildings, inspired in part by this campus picture. It was the inside cover to the 1962 War Hoop and is featured in the story The Hill, the lead story in part 2. The second photo is another taken by a Rook's dad at our first formation in front of Alumni Hall, built in 1905 for the primary purpose of housing students. That building has changed little over the years, but is packed with 115 years of stories and memories. Then there are stories about buildings that no longer exist, but their passing ought to be recognized, such as Dodge and Jackman Halls. In 1895, Norwich University, the 23rd oldest institution of higher education in the United States, was two imposing structures on the Hill, Jackman and Dodge Halls. The buildings of Norwich have generated, stored, and returned a lot of memories over the years. The 1960s brought a period of change to the campus. Some buildings were demolished and new ones erected. The landscape also changed. Living examples that record change are the maple trees, now very mature, that were planted in 1965 on the Upper Parade Ground, once a bare, grassed, flat-top hill in Vermont. Now men in their 70s walk under large trees only a few years younger than they are. Then there is the building story of how lost Norwich history was rediscovered, Dewey Hall. What nearly no cadet knew, and still may not know, was the existence of a basement. Built back at the turn of the 20th century, foundations were not finished spaces. This space was not only unfinished, it was dark, dusty, and rarely visited. During the summer of 1963, I was a resident assistant for the summer school. Along with another RA, we had many adventures exploring the campus and its hidden spaces. One day we decided to go down into the Dewey basement. We were confident it was off limits, but there wasn't much going on, so down we went. It had boarded up areas and looked as though they had not been visited since the building was erected. After we pried open one of the doors, we were amazed to discover stacks of boxes with hundreds of mint condition copies of the 3-volume Norwich history that had disappeared for several decades, likely since they were published in 1911 and even survived the 1920 fire and renovation. A short version is numbered 50 in the 200 Things. An anecdote about mailboxes and penny raid included in the story The New Barracks, 1960s, Wilson Hall. Stories of Webb Hall, Dole Auditorium, and Whitechapel, buildings of today, have a long history and indelible recollections such as the President Kennedy assassination. One memory is captured with the following anecdote. However, it was not Dole Auditorium, classrooms, nor faculty offices that are remembered best, but the distinctive smell of the metal-polished brasso in the auditorium. Smell can call up memories and powerful responses almost instantly. This is due largely to the proximity of the part of the brain that stores olfactory information and has intimate access to the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotion, and the hippocampus, which is responsible for associative learning, where brain forges a link between the smell and a memory, an event, a person, a thing, or even a moment. The smell of brasso is unique and easily identified. Originally sold to British railways, hospitals, hotels, and large shops, the trademark brasso liquid polish has been in use for over 100 years. No other brass polish ever comes close to results with brasso, nor smells the same. It has undergone very few changes in either composition or package design over the past century, except for the US, where environmental laws forced a redesign. The original formulation was liquid hydrocarbons and ammonia with kaolin and quartz for abrasives. Nothing beats burned-in olfactory memory reinforcement like petroleum and ammonia. And lastly, there are recollections of milestone events that have disappeared, such as Winter Carnival. During the 1960s, it seemed as though every fall weekend was busy, inspections, parades, and football games. There was also homecoming and parents' weekends. Parents' weekend was in mid-October, and it marked the start of the long winter with the first freezing rain and snow. The Armory was the usual gathering place. In 1962, the Winter Carnival featured a snow sculpture competition on the Upper Parade, dance and fireworks with torchlight ski parade. The snow sculptures hung around until April. I remember looking out the window of my alumni hall room to the Payne Mountain ski slope and wondering if I would ever get to do a torchlight ski parade and its intimidating ski jump. I never did either. I think it was the last time for the parade. I'm glad for the excuse because I was likely never a good enough skier to qualify, nor was I bold enough to try ski jumping. Which is a nice place to conclude this Getting Acquainted session for Building Memories. The campus is different today in 2020 than when we arrived. In 1961, Norwich University was a small, private military college campus situated in a small town in a valley between two New England mountain ranges. Today, the campus has grown in area, has both military and civilian students, and more buildings, and is still beautiful. As graduates, we can take pride in being part of it. The Cadet Corps looks good. The cadets are sharp looking and demonstrate a high level of military professionalism. More than just writing, the effort for this book required a lot of communication among old friends. I felt the exchanges produced a more interesting set of stories about things and events than I might have created on my own. I hope you'll be able to join me for the live Q&A after this.